Hey, everybody, welcome to the Ronline Report. Today's guest, you know Ed Connors as one of the three owners of the Gold's Gym franchise. He has a new book coming out telling the whole story. It is called The Three Muscleteers, the story of Gold's Gym, the birth of an industry, and how the fitness culture was reshaped. Ed, thanks for joining me today. Appreciate it very much.
Hello, Ron. I'm sorry I missed you at the Arnold.
Yeah, I missed a lot of people. It happens every year. I'm looking at pictures. I'm like, where were they? Where were they? I never saw them. And and then there's other people I see over and over and over again. How it always goes. Man, so I want to start with some stats for the people who don't realize how big Gold's Gym really was, because for a quarter century, good Lord, you were the bodybuilding, obviously the mecca, but that was Gold's Gym and bodybuilding. To a lot of people, it was synonymous. It was, you couldn't really have one without the other. I remember anytime I went out of town, I would always try to find a Gold's Gym because I knew I was going to be a good gym. So you were in, by the time you sold the franchise, you and your partners in 2004, 46 US states, I'm surprised it wasn't all 50, 26 different countries, 704 locations, 3 million members. Wow, I don't think that's ever going to be duplicated again. It's impossible, the way the gym culture is now, the industry, I should say. But first of all, before we get into it, what inspired you to write the book, Ed?
Well, I guess COVID was part of the occasion, shall we say. I've been working on a book for off and on for the past 4.5 years. But I mean, I didn't let COVID change my life, but because so much was shut down, I wrote more. And about 1.5 years ago, I made real progress. It was hard for me to get out of writing in the third person. And I also didn't really see how the three parts of my book would work together, but now it all flows and seems very natural to me.
Yeah, I just finished reading it as this afternoon. I read the parts out of order, but yeah, it flowed very well, and so many details, everything you'd ever want to know about how the gym started. I didn't even realize you were a Vietnam veteran. I knew you were an architect, a very accomplished architect. I didn't know you served in Vietnam for 21 months. So thank you for your service, first of all.
Well, I was in a way fortunate to be part of so many eras. In other words, I was at Berkeley during the free speech movement. I was in Vietnam, and I was in the army in Vietnam. I was part of the transition in the architectural world between international style and other new styles. And then most importantly, I was part of really in a dramatic change in the fitness industry in America. I mean, my book makes the point that there was sort of the big bang moment in bodybuilding in 1980 when the NPC broke away from the AAU. We started franchising. Arnold's movie came out, and Joe Weider started, publicizing Gold's Gym and fitness in America and eventually the world. So all that came together. It was really magical. I mean, never to be repeated. So that's one reason I thought the book was important to write, because people are now calling this a golden era, and it's good to get it on paper and let people think about it, and also see a lot of the physiques that were probably never to be duplicated again.
Yeah, it's funny, I consider that 80s and 90s the golden era. And I always just thought it was because that's when I discovered bodybuilding and I started. I think everybody thinks when they began doing it, that was the best era. But
right.
Looking back now, comparing it to the modern era, I really think it was a golden era.
Right.
Just the fact that everything was sort of centrally located in Los Angeles, it really was the mecca. It's obviously not that way now, and it never will be again. But man, I remember I lived in LA from 1991 to 2000. That was sort of the end. After that, it was a diaspora. Everyone went off to Las Vegas, or New York, wherever they were from. But it really was a special time. You could train at Gold's Venice. You could go get your post-workout meal at the Firehouse a couple blocks away. You could stroll down the Venice Beach Boardwalk, another couple blocks that way. There was clothing shops with bodybuilding clothing, just whole stores just for Hot Skins or Mega Pro. There was Max Muscle stores. It really was like a little bodybuilder's paradise. And your gym, Gold's Venice, the flagship, geez, in the 90s, it was like walking into a magazine. Anytime, day or night, you'd see at least a couple big name bodybuilders, actors, pro wrestlers. And on a crowded time, you could throw a rock and hit 3 famous people.
Right.
I would, yeah, go ahead.
You hit on what made it different because, think about it. Arnold Schwarzenegger had to go from Graz, Austria to Venice, California to get a workout in 1968. Now you can, anywhere in urban America, you can find a half dozen places to work out. So back then, and this again, before all the social media, Gold's Gym was the place to go. And the magazines, your magazine and others, helped make it the mecca and the most famous gym in the world.
Yeah. So, you talked about the gym industry as it was before Gold's, and it was nothing like what it would become. There were scattered health clubs. You mentioned European Health Spa, which is funny because I used to work at a European Health Spa in 1989 and 90. And they were not really gyms. They were only, all you had were those foo-foo gyms with a lot of chrome and plush carpeting and ferns. And then you had these little dungeon places with the heavy weights and people would spit on the floor and chalk. And there was nothing really to bring them together so that you had a clean, well-equipped, spacious bodybuilder type of gym. And I never thought, looking back, I wouldn't think that couldn't even work as a business model. There's not enough bodybuilders to support. There's not enough hardcore bodybuilders to support any real gym except some little tiny place. But you managed to make it a place. One of your best ad slogans over the years was serious fitness for everybody. You managed to have a place that could attract both all the hardcore people and the mainstream people, and they weren't afraid to mix and mingle with each other. Right. And I've yet to see anything like that before or since. It really was. Can you comment on how we were able to make that happen?
Well, my partner Tim Kimber feels that we were very welcoming. We treated everybody like family. So we gave away a lot of free memberships and clothing. And that was a key in making everybody feel welcome, celebrities, top bodybuilders, people that were coming to LA for a dream. So it was, we created a real wonderful, welcoming feeling, I think, for everybody. Everybody was welcome. And that was one of my favorite slogans was serious fitness for everybody.
Yeah. So like I said, you were a very accomplished architect. That's a great career. Can you tell us how you went from that to becoming a gym owner and then a franchise owner?
Well, I was working in New York City as an architect and was laid off in 1975. And I ended up taking a job in Los Angeles. My first project was the Neiman Marcus store in Beverly Hills. And during my search for a job, I had met Pete Grimkowski in Florida, and he was the biggest guy I'd ever seen. And I had also, when I was in LA interviewing for the job, and there I went down to Gold's Gym. At the time, it was in its original location. And I thought, well, Pete would be the biggest guy there. I mean, I don't know who I saw at the time, but I said, you should come to California. And he said, well, there's just no way I could do it. I'm going through divorce. I've got no money, no car. And I said, well, if I take the job out there, I'll fly you out and, you can go for it. And I guess the humidity in Vietnam was so much on my mind that, and Orlando was so oppressive, the heat and humidity. I swore I wouldn't take a job with Disney, and I ended up taking a job. So it's actually because of the humidity in Florida that the whole Gold's Gym thing started. I mean, I opened the first franchise ever in 1980. So anyway, Pete settled in. He won Mr. World. One day he called me up and said, Ed, are you interested in buying Gold's Gym with me? And I thought there were probably many others involved, and there was only Pete and one other person. So it was a fluke investment. I made $15,000.
Wow.
Which I had saved to buy a new BMW.
That's
right. So then but I still continued working as an architect for those 6 years because, it was a struggling new business. We lost money the first year, and it wasn't until we were kind of going full force that I just said, well, I'm working as it's more meaningful for me to be part of Gold's Gym full time than to be working as an architect. My last project was the Fox Plaza in Century City, when people was in the first Die Hard movie, Nakatomi Plaza.
Wow, some very iconic places you've been a part of. Is Neiman Marcus part of the Beverly Center?
No, it's on it's on Wilshire. I'm sorry, yeah, Wilshire in Beverly Hills. It's not. It's a standalone building.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So when you bought the first Gold's Gym, that was the original location on Main Street, the one that was in the movie Pumping Iron? Or
No,
was
it
it the
was
Santa
the
Monica?
second location. When Pete, Tim, and I bought it, well, ultimately Tim Kimber, we bought it on February 28, 1979. It was in downtown Santa Monica. That was the second location. And then in 81, which I talk about in my book, we moved it back to Venice.
Yeah, it's a funny story. It's your landlord was Robert Blake, who played Beretta in the cop show in the 70s, and he tried to triple your rent.
Yeah.
And that's how you ended up finding. What a stroke of luck, because I can't imagine it was 3rd Street Promenade where the previous location. I can't imagine Gold's Venice ever becoming what it was had it stayed there. The Hampton Drive location is just, it's iconic.
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, that was a stroke of luck that we had, is that when we moved into that 4-bay warehouse, we took the first bay, and over the next 9 years, we were able to expand in place as the fitness world developed. We added aerobics and the posing room and cardio. There was no cardio. There was not a bike in the gym when we bought it.
Wow.
And so there are probably now over 100 pieces. So no, we were able to expand initially from 9,100 square feet to about 26,000 at the end.
Wow. Yeah, I remember, because people call it first room at Gold, second room, third room. That's how we always referred to it, because the first room was magical because it had that mirror in the back. When the cargo doors were rolled up at a certain time in the late afternoon, everybody looked amazing in that mirror.
Well, in my book, I talk about the trick mirrors, because people actually would ask me if we had mirrors, trick mirrors that made them look smaller, because they felt like they looked bigger in their home gym. So I always got a kick out of that. But yeah, it was that was, first room was special, and again, because of the second, between the second and third room was a earthquake solid wall, demising wall. We couldn't take that out, but we removed the walls between the first and second rooms and the third and fourth.
Yeah, I mean, it's enormous now. And you pioneered so many things. Cardio theater is something we all take for granted now, with the TVs in front of you were the first ones to ever do that, with big screen TVs in front of the.
I don't know that we were the first, but we were certainly, it was novel to have we had actually a deck built of several levels so that you could see over people and see I got the biggest screen TV at the time. I think we had 2 big TVs. They were tiny by comparison to today's world, but you couldn't see into the gym, unlike the cardio in the first room. So we were trying to make it, more enjoyable to do cardio. And that was before the cardio pieces had TVs on them. Right. This is probably in the mid 1980s.
Yeah, and another thing that I found interesting was that you had always dreamed of being published in an architectural magazine from Italy.
Right.
You had done all these amazing buildings in New York and LA, and it turned out the gym in Venice was the one that ended up getting you that article. They loved the layout of the gym, the way everything was.
Well, somehow the Italians saw it as a very novel design. I mean, you mentioned the world you had come from, where you had the high-end chrome-plated gyms, and you had the low-end, really hardcore black, and there was really nothing in between. So I guess they saw that. But I mean, the actual design of Venice, I wouldn't recommend probably for anyone else anywhere else in the world. It's just too simple, too crude, really. And as I mentioned in my book, it's like a Chinese restaurant where the worse it looks, probably the better the food is.
Yeah. One thing I always loved about Gold's Venice was there would always be brand new equipment, lines, and the whole line of a brand. I'd walk in one day and there'd be a whole line of new Cybex machines or hammer strength, something I had never seen before. I'm like, wow, what is this? Because it was like a showroom. You were able to get most or all of that equipment for free from the manufacturers, weren't you?
Right. I mean, initially, I don't think the equipment companies realized what a showroom it could be for them. But of course, not only were my house guests and the athletes in the magazines in the gym, but their equipment was publicized for free in all the magazines. A full page ad in one of Weider's magazines cost $35,000. But you imagine, you pick up the magazine and you could page through it and there might be 20, 30 photos obviously taken in Gold's Gym. So, and they were typically my house guests or people that we had invited out there, and equipment companies benefited from all that exposure. I think we really, like someone like Hammer Strength, we really made them a big deal quickly.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, did you have all the old original pieces that Joe Gold and some other guy had built in the original Golds? I don't know if they're still there. I feel like they were there when I was there in the 90s, though.
I'm sure some were, not all, but we had Joe Gold's equipment initially, and that one in itself was a breakthrough or revolutionary. And in fact, my first gym in San Francisco had all of Joe Gold's equipment that he had made with George Vipasek.
So, Los Angeles was kind of a mecca before you started Gold's Venice and started franchising, but it definitely became much more so after that. I believe that the 80s and the 90s were when that was the heyday, when people from all over the world would come out to Venice to stay for a few days, a week, or months. That Marina Pacific Hotel down the street was always packed with people visiting. You'd walk into Gold's and there'd be people that were national champions from all these different countries, state champions from all around the USA. And like I said, I remember running into, it's funny, you talk about Gina Davis and Jeff Goldblum were longtime members. One time I was doing calves and I wanted to work in with Jeff. And I got his autograph. I still have it in one of my training journals. I think the Fly had just come out a couple of years before, something like that. Keanu Reeves, I remember him being trained there. So many actors. Magic Johnson was there a lot. That's one thing I'm curious, because celebrities typically, especially now, they don't want to be around the general public, and they certainly, if they exercise, they go to private training studios or they have a trainer come to their own home. How were we able to make such a welcoming atmosphere where even the celebrities felt like it was okay? They weren't going to be bothered or harassed. They could come there and work out with everybody else.
I think the professional bodybuilders or just our members really gave them their space. And part of it, I mean, thank God, it was time before smartphones and cameras. So nobody had to worry about being photographed working out, which I think is probably huge. I mean, that's technology, unfortunately, has not made the gym, because of technology, the gym has lost a lot of its appeal or magic. Everybody's got something on their ears. They're in their own little world. Back then, you listen to the music, and of course, back then you had to be in Venice to see and be seen. Now you can do it from anywhere with TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. You don't need to go to LA. So we again, this is all part of that, what made that time just so magical, and why I don't think it can be repeated, because all of this was coming together in a wonderful way. Everybody seems to have wonderful memories of that time.
Definitely.
They were, a lot of the people I knew, they were in their 20s. It was the first time maybe on a plane. And LA was very, half America had never even flown.
Wow.
So this was they were going to LA, and it was still, it was a magical place. It's been really affected by COVID, but it still is a city where, where else could I go as a 30-year-old architect and be the senior designer on Neiman Marcus Beverly Hills? Yeah. It was a $16 million building and a $3 million garage, which doesn't seem like a lot now, but back then, and it was a big deal.
Do the math. That's probably like $100 million in today's dollars, or something like that, maybe. So you had the one gym. Who had the first idea to franchise and start having more and more Gold's gyms?
Well, Pete was traveling the world as Mr. World, and people would he would see that people would ask him what the Mecca was like, but realized that very few of them could ever visit. So he had the idea of, why not bring the Mecca to the people? And I knew somebody who was struggling with a gym in San Francisco, a couple of guys, and with the help of my father, I was able to buy it and then make it the first Gold's Gym.
Oh, so that was the first franchise Gold's Gym was Gold San Francisco.
We called it a license at the time because we didn't have a business plan. There was no manual. So we were a licensed operation until 1994.
Wow. Did you ever dream at that time it would grow to be what it did become? It's 704 locations all around the world.
I don't know that. I think certainly when I quit being an architect full time in 1985, I thought we were doing something significant, but we benefited a lot. Again, it's timing. It was, Ronald Reagan became president after Carter botched the Iran hostage crisis, and so for the next for all of the years that Pete, Tim, and I were owners, we were part of an economic boom in America, and I think Reagan encouraged a lot of entrepreneurs, or that spirit of we can do anything. Because most of our licensees were young guys who had never really worked and done anything before, or been in business, or if they were working, they were young accountants, or you name it. But they love fitness. So again, it's just incredible timing.
Yeah, I mean the fitness boom was really hitting. I consider those. I don't want to. I hate putting it this way because I'm going to make it sound like bodybuilding has gone downhill, but I really think those were the halcyon days of bodybuilding, the 80s and the 90s. We have a bigger industry now, but it's so much more splintered into fitness, men's physique. It's all back then. It was just bodybuilding. That was it. Men's and women's bodybuilding, and man, the way we all dressed back then, and I remember the big giant shirts and the clown pants, and
right.
It's funny. It's so many iconic things. You talk a lot about the Barbarian Brothers. They were, I think, if anyone really defines golds in the 80s, you think about the Barbarian Brothers training there with the work boots and the overalls and the long hair and the headbands and spitting on. I know we
had a lot of characters back then, and I don't know where they are now. There don't seem to be as many characters as there were back then. I'll never forget the day the Barbarians. Well, I happened to be in the gym in Santa Monica when they walked in, and they who else could just say, well, yeah, we're the Barbarian Brothers, and get away with it, and you just say, sure, okay, and
yeah, they just come out from Rhode Island, I think that's where they're from.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, everybody ended up in LA. LA was where everybody wanted to go back then.
Well, for a big city in America, it was very affordable at the time. And also, again, it's a city of dreamers. It's, I think I talk a little bit in my book about that, if you, one of my house guests saw, my convertible Mercedes parked on the street. And he said, in my hometown, people would probably throw trash in that or even pee in it. Oh, but gosh. In LA, they look at that and say, I might have a car like that one day. And they dared to dream there. And because you never know who would make it, you were giving people space. And if they made it, then maybe there was a good chance you would make it, whatever your dream was. I mean, Jean-Claude Van Damme lived in a van in a parking lot. Kevin Sorbo wasn't much far behind. I mean, there were people, I saw people like that. And again, that was one of the things that motivated me to start inviting people into the various homes I had in Venice, knowing that was perhaps all they needed to go for it, to change their life.
Yeah, I had just read that part shortly before we started the interview, and you were instrumental in helping a lot of people come out to LA where they probably couldn't have afforded to because they had nowhere to stay, and you would let them stay with you for a month or a few. I think you said 5 months was about the limit, but then they would find their own way. They would get on their feet. And I mean, geez, 525 altogether, you counted, but some big names. You had Jay Cutler and his wife living there at one time, Gunther Schlierkamp, Nasser, John Cena, who wrote the foreword for your book. A lot of people would never have allowed people don't want, especially now, people don't want anyone in their house. We're also, I don't know, selfish.
I think that's really sad because, again, I haven't let COVID affect my life, but I mean, you could change someone's life by giving them a place to stay and occasionally help with food or whatever. Because like Gunther Schlierkamp, I knew he needed to be in LA, but of course, if he were to get a hotel with his wife and eat out, he'd basically eat up all the savings he had for a deposit on his rent. So, I mean, he stayed at my house, I think, about 5 months and learned English. And eventually I introduced him to Joe Weider. He got a contract and then he moved out and he had successful 9 or 10-year career. So yeah, it just that one little act could change a life. And I mean, a lot of the homeless are crazy and on drugs and God knows what else. But I mean, there's so many people that, I mean, there's got to be a way for more people to invite people into give them a base to go out from, to create, to build a new life or take a chance. Many of my house guests, didn't end up pursuing what they thought was their dream, but at least they'll never look back saying, what if? And they told me that the time they spent in LA was wonderful, and it saved them maybe 2 or 3 years of pursuing something they didn't really want to do once they saw it in full action in Venice. I mean, whether it was the dieting or the drugs or whatever, they moved on, but they all treasure that time.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the late Joe Weider, because it seems like Gold's Gym and the Weider Enterprises had a very synergistic relationship, where I remember for many years reading Flex and Muscle and Fitness. Every other person had a Gold's Gym tank top on. 90% of the photo shoots seemed like they were done at Gold's Gym Venice. How did that come to be? Was that just something that naturally occurred, or did you and Joe ever come together?
It wasn't really so natural. I mean, Weider, someone at Weider pulled our ads the first year we bought the gym, and that was responsible for a lot of our income. We had some small mail order ads in the back of the magazine. So I contacted Joe, and when he found out I was an architect, he said, well, he invited me over to his house, and he was having some issues with his contractor on remodeling. So for the next, several years, I helped him with his various architectural projects, and it was kind of a quid pro quo. If I helped him, he would help us. And we were in the magazines. I gave all of his writers and photographers, free memberships, free reign of the gym. And no, we were, there were 24 photographers I name in my book that, we welcomed. The first call I got after we sold the gym in 2004 was from one of the photographers that said, and they want me to pay $325 to shoot in the gym. So that the new owners did not get it. It was all the free publicity we got in the magazines. A lot of it with my house guests that made the gym famous. That was, now that magazines are gone, virtually gone. I mean, Muscular Development is about the only one left. But back then, I mean, there were a dozen, and you could pick them up, and they were full of Gold's Gym.
Yeah. So you said at one point in the book that your advertising budget wasn't that high because you really didn't need to advertise. You had all these photo shoots going on constantly.
Right.
You said Eddie Murphy wore a Gold's Gym leather jacket when he hosted the MTV Awards one year. So that was 3 hours of, the highest rated show in America for that week, I'm sure. Were you surprised that so many people really embraced the logo, the image? It really became like a cool, hip thing to be associated with Gold's Gym.
You got to remember that AIDS was kind of rearing its ugly head back in the 80s. And I think a lot of celebrities wanted to be associated with health and fitness. And I know Weider I don't think he ever paid anybody to be on the cover of his magazine. And as long as he hired a good stylist and makeup artist and a good photographer, and he had some of the best, they would do it for free. And again, they were associating with a healthy lifestyle. And the same way, we never paid anybody to train at the gym. And I think they were promoting the fact that they work out and they're into fitness. But it was very touching, really. But I mean, they were having a blast on there. People like Jimmy Kahn, I think they just loved being there. And it was like family. I mean, it was better than a bar, right? Or where else would you go for that kind of camaraderie?
Yeah, we've talked about the difference, because I said I worked on the American Muscle show for ESPN for 8 years, and we did most of our filming a couple blocks away on Abbott Kinney Boulevard at World Gym, only because Joe Gold didn't allow music there, and we needed to pick up the audio of the people the people talking. So, but I always wanted to go to Gold. I was a member there for a year, and the atmosphere was just electric. You would walk into that place, even if you were tired, had a rough day, instantly you were energized because you had this blasting loud rock music. Usually, so many people, you hear clang, 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 and it's just the buzz. It was a real palpable feeling when you walked into that place. Was that something, it wasn't an accident. You actually sort of calculated it to be that way, didn't you?
Yeah, the music was a big deal. And I make that point in my book. I mean, that's what's missing now in a lot of gyms. People are in their own little world. But back then, I really think the music was key. Pete Gumkowski even had this theory that, energy is transformed from people, among people via the music. And I think there might be something to that. Again, in my book, I mentioned Studio 54, which by then was closed in New York City. But I remembered it because of my time there. And, how would Studio 54 work without music? That was, or any disco, again, that was a disco era. John Travolta was, again, appearing in fitness gear on the covers of magazines, but he was part of that disco era that, music made people feel alive.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. The gyms still have music, but everyone's got their own music on now.
Yeah.
So everyone's sort of disconnected. It's completely different.
Recently, I visited Dave Fisher's Powerhouse Gym in the South Bay area of LA, and he had music playing very loud, like in the Gold's Gym Venice. And I really think it reminded me of the old times, and for him, it's working. So I'd encourage a lot of owners just to turn up the volume.
So, as when you had the franchise, I remember like at one point my wife and I looked into a World Gym franchise in the 90s, and they had a whole list of regulations. This is what the gym has to have. What were some features that every Gold's Gym had to have to be part of the franchise?
Well, we're kind of like McDonald's. We wanted it to be clean, well equipped, and provide good service. So those three elements. We really, the only physical thing we mandated was the size of the gym. It had to be a certain size, but we didn't believe one equipment manufacturer made it all. In fact, that would be almost a legal issue in franchising, that you mandate a certain manufacturer. But obviously there had to be a certain amount of equipment which we would approve. And I would look over every layout. I wouldn't play architect for the licensee, but I would mark up the drawings if I thought something needed to be done. And I didn't want, again, this is an important point I make in my book. I didn't want to be part of what I call the malling of America, where, like Westfield Mall they don't brand their malls by the town name. It's just a Westfield Mall. I would rather, have it be a specific place. And, 24-hour LA Fitness were putting up these huge boxes all alike. And I love the fact that our Gold's Gym owners went into existing spaces, or rarely built their own building. And they made a unique Gold's Gym for that market. I wanted it to be just as good as Venice in terms of the quality of the experience and equipment, but it needed, like the Gold's Gym Moscow had a full-time checkout or check-in room for members' fur coats, things like that. San Francisco Gold's Gym didn't have babysitting; it had doggy daycare. So the gyms were tailored to their market. It was wonderful. When you traveled, you then would know you're in a different city, foreign city maybe. It was a new experience. It made, I think, working out more fun, right?
Yeah. Venice was obviously that's the one we all know. It's still there. I'm sure you traveled to many, many of the locations. Which ones really impressed you as far as like, wow, this is almost as good as Gold's Venice?
Well, I was involved myself in 37 Gold's Gyms in 7 different states. And the ones in Portland, my first one there with my 4 partners was in a former screw factory in downtown Portland with 35-foot ceilings. And I designed all 9 gyms for that market, the greater Portland market. And those were some of the most, I wish in many ways that Venice looked more like the downtown Portland club. It's now a 24-hour, I believe. But no, there were many wonderful gyms in different parts of the country, not that were mind-boggling, the way that they had picked up on that. There was one in Madison, Wisconsin, I'll never forget. that was, it looked like walking into a disco. It was so alive. It was, you were so, your eyes went everywhere. You were so distracted by all the visual.
Yeah, it's funny that I worked for the American Muscle Show all those years. We used to get videotapes sent to us from all over the place, and I remember get a couple from places, third world countries, where people had these makeshift gyms that they had built out in the middle of nowhere or whatever, just ramshackle equipment from pieces of tree, whatever. But on the wall, they would have the Gold's Gym logo, and they would paint Gold's Gym because that's what they all aspired to be, was Gold's Gym. So it really did become such an iconic thing. It's crazy how, even though it's not what it was, it's still, maybe it's because I'm older, but to me, Gold's Gym is always going to have that sort of reputation.
Well, of the 680 Gold's Gyms that currently are in existence, 400 are overseas, and the 100 or so in Japan are really amazing because they even duplicated, our stripe over the mirrors, and you walk into those and it's amazing how they picked up on our model and interpreted for Japan. Those were some of the most incredible Gold's Gyms I've ever seen. Wow. We have 100 in India right now, over 100.
Wow, yeah, India is coming on strong. I'm surprised you don't have more in Brazil. Maybe you will.
Well, yeah, I know we've got some gyms down there that call themselves the Mecca. Oh. So people flattered us by naming their gym the Mecca, which people knew what that meant. So, yeah, Brazil is amazing. I love the effect. And again, this is what the transformation of what we started back in the 80s is now worldwide, and in some countries like Brazil, I think it's brought a lot of young men and women out of poverty and given them a new life. So it really, I've been to Brazil a couple of times, and it's really gratifying to see the change that fitness has made.
Yeah, I don't know how closely you follow the competitors now, but there's so many great competitors coming out of Brazil. Right. And this guy Ramon, they call him Ramon Dino, the classic physique guy. Great example of what you just said. He came from basically the Amazon rainforest, some horrible, crushing poverty, and now he's the highest paid physique athlete in Brazil. Yeah, he's making more than maybe there's a couple American bodybuilders that make more than him, but no more than that.
I tried to reach out to him at the Arnold, but like so many foreign bodybuilders, he didn't speak any English, and so I talk about that in my book. That's been a huge drawback for a lot of greats.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's a multicultural world, but English is still kind of we Americans demand that everyone speak English because we tend not to speak too many other languages. So Gold's Venice especially changed. I remember when I heard they were taking down the pictures of all the great bodybuilders off the wall, and bodybuilders would complain, say they walk in and they made them pay for the day, which by then it was like 25 or 30 bucks for the day. And he'd say, but that's me up on the wall, before they took the pictures down. Obviously you had nothing to do with it. You had already sold the franchise off at that point, but did it sort of make you sad to see that the new ownership didn't have the same respect or affinity for bodybuilding that the Golds had been known for all those years?
Well, I talk about that in my book. It's just amazing to me how the owners that bought the gym from Brockway Moran in 2004, how dumb they were, how stupid. Because obviously when you buy a franchise, I mean, the clear business plan is to buy up successful franchises when they want to sell or retire or whatever, move on. And they didn't do that. And no, it's almost mind-boggling how badly they failed. But they never. I had one phone call from them during that entire 17 years. They had nobody on their board with any gym experience.
Wow.
Texas billionaire in the oil business that I'm sure thought that you want to make more money, you just raise the price of the franchise fee, like oil. And he basically, for the average gym owner, he more than quintupled their franchise fee. Wow. And I believe the Gold's Gym name is worth something, but not that much. We're not fast food. He was charging they were charging interest rates or royalty fees similar to what fast food places charge, but it's a whole different business model.
Yeah, you mentioned in the book, some of the franchisees. There was one story you told about the wrestlers Sting and Lex Luger. They had a Gold's Gym in, was it Atlanta? Was that
right? Mm-hmm.
And they decided they were going to go independent and call it Main Event Fitness. I think did they have 2 locations? And,
they may have gotten to 2. I'm not sure. I think they were planning the second, and then it collapsed.
But you made a funny quip in there because they thought they knew how to run a gym because they liked going to the gym, and you said, "Well, I like going out to eat at restaurants. Doesn't mean I know how to run a restaurant."
Right.
The franchise was instrumental in ensuring the success of so many of these locations. Has any other gym franchise ever been that successful? Obviously, the numbers speak for themselves, but I feel as if these franchisees wouldn't have been able to do this on their own without the Gold's Gym name and without the help of Gold's Gym corporate.
Well, certainly Planet Fitness has had a lot of success. It was started by some former Gold's Gym owners. I think their fees are too high and their model needs to change, but no, they're over 1,000 locations, I'm sure.
Wow. Yeah, that's true. There's one there's one about a 5-minute walk from me, but I don't consider those gyms and the anti-bodybuilding attitude.
Well, I think the anti-bodybuilding state, the lunk alarm, I think that's overdone.
Yeah.
Again, it's serious fitness, everybody. We didn't have a problem.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was a huge key to your success was everybody was welcome.
Yeah.
Planet Fitness says judgment-free zone, but that's completely inaccurate. All the Golds I ever went into over those years, and I probably visited about 40 or 50 Golds at least in my lifetime. They all had sort of a welcoming feel to them. You walked in and, they were always friendly at the desk and as helpful as they could be. And, if you wanted other places you'd walk in, if they saw you're a bodybuilder right away, they'd give you a dirty look and they didn't want you there.
I don't understand that.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't start I wasn't part of the Arnold era, but I feel like bodybuilding and bodybuilders are responsible for this whole fitness industry. There wouldn't be a Planet Fitness if there had never been a Gold's Gym. There wouldn't be an LA Fitness. We wouldn't have all these supplements on the stores at Walmart and Target and everything if it weren't for the little world of bodybuilding that branched out into all this.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's come so far over the years. Do you sometimes look back, because you were there, you've seen this entire evolution from the time when lifting weights was something that was made fun of, that athletes couldn't even lift weights when you were a young guy, that it was considered.
And that's another reason I wrote the book, is I don't think people realize how far things have changed. Because back when I was in high school or college, none of the big sport, football, basketball, baseball, none of them had weight training. In fact, it was Boyd Epley, who was, Mr. Nebraska, that actually started the weight program at the University of Nebraska, which became somewhat famous. And that's when it all changed. So now it's every sport, as I say in my book, has weight training involved. And, women that was totally banned for women. So we've come, that's why I say that, Joe Gold, Joe Weider, Arnold, Gold's Gym, the NPC, we changed the culture. It was a really pivotal moment. And I mean, how many times can a culture change like that? I think it's really significant.
Yeah, I mean, I was born in 1969, and even in my lifetime, there were no gyms around when I was a kid. I never heard anyone talking about going to people. Some people had weights at home. We had a little bit of weights, but there really weren't gyms. It's crazy because now if you tell people that, they'd say, really, that's insane. What do you mean there were no gyms?
Yeah.
Now, geez, you go down, any good sized city has dozens, if not hundreds of alternate places you can go train.
But that's how I started my book, because I think people have no idea what a different world we're in right now. And it's going to even be probably more different after the pandemic. So I think if you're in the fitness industry, personal trainer, you need to read my book and understand where we've been, and it may help you understand where we're going, I hope.
Yeah, it is. It's a great history. It really is. You basically cover the whole gym industry, not just Gold's Gym. It's all encapsulated in there. So Ed, when does this book come out, and where can people get it?
It comes out April 12th on Amazon, the digital or electronic version and the print version.
Excellent.
The audio version hopefully will come later, but right now it'll be on Amazon only on the 12th of April, which is a Tuesday. Yeah.
Well, I have read it, guys. I cannot recommend it highly enough. It's fascinating, and I didn't even get to see the pictures. I just got the text. So
there'll be a lot of autographed photographs.
I'm sure it's going to be cool. Well, Ed, thank you so much for taking the time. It's a great read. I thank you for writing it, because I learned a lot. I knew a lot of things in there.
My appreciation to Steve Bleckman and all of his help over the years, and you in the magazine. Thank you very much.
Oh yeah, we're the last one. We're the last Mohican, the last print magazine. Isn't that scary to think about? The last.
Well, I think I believe there's room for one magazine, at least even now, in every category. So I hope yours is it.
I hope so too.
So make it bigger and better. Okay.
That's the plan. All right. Well, thank you, Ed, for the time, everybody. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video, and get a hold of that book, The 3 Muscleteers, coming out very soon on Amazon.com by Ed Connors. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.